Hello and welcome to your latest weekly catch-up from the world of sport. There has been plenty going on in the last 7 days, so we will dive right in. We will start with the rugby since that's freshest in the mind. Yesterday should have seen France play Scotland in Paris. That match didn't happen in the end. We were debating last week whether or not it would be called off. It was actually going to go ahead up until Wednesday when another French player tested positive for COVID. That made it 11 players, at least 2 members of the backroom staff with another 2 that had given inconclusive tests. Now, there is some controversy around this one. Firstly, when are they going to replay the match? Because that last player who tested positive was with the squad on Wednesday. Technically that squad now had to do a 10-day isolation, which means that they can't really play the match on the next Fallow weekend, which is this weekend coming. There was talk then of playing it midweek the following week, which would mean both France and Scotland have to play 2 games in a week. There was also talk of playing it in July, which is the next international window that opens up. Now that's not a great option for a number of reasons. One, it drags the Six Nations on, it doesn't give us a great conclusion, it makes a mockery of Super Saturday at the end of the tournament. 2, the date being proposed in July, the Lions, if it happens, are in South Africa playing a warm-up match. France are meant to be on their way to Australia for their summer series. So it's not ideal for either team to be played in July, it's not ideal for the tournament. Probably the best scenario is for it to be played on Tuesday the 8th of March. But here's the controversial part. The Six Nations always said that they would adopt a no-blame policy for a COVID outbreak and they would rearrange the match rather than awarding a 28-0 win as they did in the Autumn Cup. But that was obviously assuming there was no blame. What has emerged from France over the last few days is proof that the players and head coach Fabien Galthié both broke the bubble on more than one occasion, and Fabien Galthié was one of the first to test positive. So this is not great for France, who of course at the beginning of the tournament were a doubt to even take part because of the quite stringent COVID rules in France as a country about travel and quarantine and various things. So it could very well be that the government revokes France's ability to play the rest of the Six Nations. We don't know. At the moment, the Six Nations are staying stum. They're not commenting on these bubble breaches and they're just saying that the match will be rearranged. But obviously, if you're Scotland and you're now being effectively penalised for something that wasn't out of your control when the team you were playing have been guilty of a breach, you'd be pretty miffed, wouldn't you, at not getting that 28-0 walkover bonus point win. So that's those 2. That left 2 matches to be played on Saturday. Ireland were in Italy. They were comfortable winners, scoring nearly half a century of points. Italy got a try and a penalty. Oh, there goes my dog. Obviously very comfortable for Ireland. Italy, again, as they had done in the first 2 matches, showed glimpses of what they are capable of, but they cannot string it together for 80 minutes. If this team stays together though, hopefully they will start to become more and more competitive and maybe even start winning matches in the Six Nations again. Later on in the afternoon, Wales took on England at the Principality. This was a huge clash. Wales came into this tournament as dark horses. They were not particularly well fancied. England, one of the favourites going in. Wales ran out comfortable winners by 16 points, winning 40-24, but it was not a match without its own share of controversy. Wales scored 2 first-half tries and commentators, pundits, ex-players were not happy with either of them. The first one, the ref told Owen Farrell, time off, go talk to your men, relay some messages, not happy with XYZ. Owen Farrell brought his players into a huddle, absolutely fine. Dan Biggar's got the ball, ready and waiting. He says to the ref what's going on. The ref's like, yeah, time on. Biggar, absolutely no fault, makes it very clear, definitely time on, definitely time on, time on. Time on, Biggar kicks the ball to the corner. England is still in their huddle. Easy try for Wales. No one was happy about that one. Everyone thought that was poor reffing. Second one was more 50-50. Rhys Sammet, that really exciting Welsh winger, effectively dropped the ball. Dropped it seemingly forwards, but then it hit his leg and bounced backwards. Liam Williams picked up and scored a try. Went to the TMO said it wasn't a knock-on, ref said it wasn't a knock-on. The try stood. Reece Summit looked incredibly sheepish. He was sure he'd knocked it on. Again, pundits weren't happy, commentators weren't happy. Ex-refs were very, very split. Nigel Owens thought it was a knock-on, and to be honest, I tend to take him as the authority. But yeah, it wasn't great to have both decisions go against England from an English point of view. But they can't help themselves. They gave away a raft of penalties. Itoje, in particular, very guilty on that front. The Sarries players still look rusty. They are still lacking game time. They still don't have an answer when the match is going away from them. They still can't change it up. Wales played very well. George North got his 100th cap. He had a brilliant game. Alan Wynne-Jones led from the front, as he always does. What can you do? Wales are now growing and growing in confidence, rumbling through, and quite frankly, having won the Triple Crown, are now favourites for the Grand Slam, given what's going on in the French squad right now. There was further controversy after the match, thank you to social media and some trolling. Firstly, Sonia McLaughlin got pasted for her post-match interview with both Owen Farrell and Eddie Jones, even though all she did was ask hard but fair questions. She asked about the controversial decisions, she asked about the referee, she asked about the penalty count. Quite frankly, if she hadn't asked any of those things, she would have been negligent in doing her job properly. So no issues there whatsoever. The abuse she got was absolutely out of line. But welcome to the 21st century and Twitter trolls, everyone. Ellis Genge was next in line to be trolled because some post-match video showed he didn't clap the Wales team off. Well, not everyone always does clap each other off. They might have a beer afterwards, but in that immediate bit post-match, they're thinking about a tackle they missed, a penalty they gave away, the score. They're thinking about whether they're hungry or not. They're thinking about how quickly they can get back to their families because they are smarting from defeat. They're thinking about 101 things. Yes, they should be applauding the other team. Doesn't always happen. This is the real world. He's not the first, he's not the last. He did not deserve the amount of abuse that was hurled at him. And quite frankly, it's starting to mar a lot of sporting occasions because you want to go on social media afterwards, you want to get a feel for decisions, you want to have some banter with some opposite fans, and at the moment it's all just a little bit nasty, which is a shame, really. Nothing more to be said about that. Six Nations takes a break this weekend coming. The following weekend we have matches again, but obviously we'll wait and see if that Scotland-France match is rescheduled in the interim or not. On to the cricket. Well, the cricket should have gone up until yesterday, believe it or not. It was over on Thursday, just over 5 sessions, the shortest completed test match since the 1930s. We're talking days of uncovered pitches, we're talking pre-World War II. It was a bonkers match for so many reasons. Andrew Strauss called it a lottery. I wouldn't quite go that far. We have two main factors at play, poor batting and a poor pitch. It was a day-nighter in Ahmedabad. Started at 9 AM, which was glorious for UK fans, but unfortunately we only got 2 of those. England batted first. They were bowled out for just over 100. It was really, really, really poor batting. A lot of batsmen gave their wicket away. Zach Crawley made a half century on his return to the team, but it just didn't go well against spin, as it hasn't really all series. India came in, they looked good at the close of play on day 1, then they came back in the following morning and Root took 5 wickets for 8 runs. Now, Root is a very, very, very decent part-time spin bowler. He is not a 5 wicket for 8 run spin bowler, meaning no disrespect to him. The pitch was spinning, it was causing problems, but even India admitted they didn't bat well enough. England were now back in the game. They had a deficit of about 30. They had a chance here. It wasn't a day 5 pitch yet. It wasn't great, but, you know, they should have given it a better go than they did. This time they were bowled out for 80 odd. India came out and whacked 40 odd runs with the loss of no wickets to win the match. The majority of wickets fell to spin, so there was an argument as well that England played the wrong side. They played 3 frontline seam bowlers in Broad, Anderson and Archer. Now, it's difficult to know what else they could have done. Moeen Ali has gone home for his scheduled break. That left Dom Bess as the only other spin option to partner Jack Leach. Those two played in Sri Lanka. They also played in the first test. The England management don't currently trust Dom Bess. He didn't bowl particularly well in that first test, and he's not putting pressure on an end. He's giving away too many runs, quite simply. He's a young guy, he's not brilliant and experienced, and it is tough going to India when the pressure is massively on your shoulders because you are supposed to carry the team as the spin bowler. So it will be very, very interesting to see what England do going into the fourth and final test. It's also at Ahmedabad, so it will be interesting to see what sort of pitch is prepared. The groundsman will have come in for quite a lot of flack, so you'd imagine he might prepare something a little more forgiving to the batsman, but we will have to wait and see on that front. Looking at the Indian team, Axar Patel took 11 wickets in the match. Ashwin went past 400 test wickets in his career. So their spin bowlers are absolutely doing the business and looking really, really good. They've got one of the best seam bowling contingents they've probably ever had. And the batsmen are doing the business even if they didn't show it in this match. So India lead the series 2-1 going into the final test, and India can still qualify for that World Test Championship. If it's a 2-2 draw, Australia will be playing New Zealand at Lord's later this summer. England are out of the reckoning. One thing to note quickly is England have appointed Marcus Trescothick as their batting coach, which is great to see. He was obviously a great player for England, career cut slightly short due to mental health problems, but had a very long Somerset career, is a brilliant batsman, and it'll be very interesting to see the influence he has on the batsmen, because let's face it, they need some work. Right, moving on to Tiger Woods. We discussed him last weekend and how he was in a race to be fit for the Masters. Well, he's probably not going to play the Masters anymore. He was involved in a car crash. No other cars were involved. He rolled his SUV. He's broken his leg, shattered his ankle. He's got a load of metal work now in his leg. Now, we wish him all the best, but he is 45. This is a big injury. Obviously, anything leg-related does affect your back and vice versa. So it'll be interesting to see how he recovers, how long his recovery takes, and if we ever see him on a pro golf tour again, really. But yeah, I think the Masters is definitely out of the question for Tiger, which is a shame for him after he was working so hard to get fit. Right, last week I promised you an update on shoes. We are talking now track technology. So of course Nike's Vaporflies have done the business on the road for the last 18 months or so. We've seen marathon and longer distance road records tumble. We now have a Spikes version for the track. It's not quite the same technology, but if you want more on the science of the actual way the shoes are built, go and follow Ross Tucker on Twitter. He's a South African sports scientist, really, really, really interesting chap. From him, we are guessing that the gain these spikes can offer certain athletes is 1 to 5% performance, which when you consider on the track, races are won by fractions of a second, 5% is an absolutely huge gain. It does depend on the athlete, the way they train, their physiology and various other things. But so far we are seeing certainly national records being broken on a weekly basis at the small meets that are currently happening. As this season ramps up towards Tokyo, we are expecting world records to start being broken on quite a regular basis. The athletes themselves are staying pretty quiet about this for various reasons. They don't want their gains to just be shoe related. They want the credit for training blocks or natural talent, which is fair enough. We also don't know if every manufacturer currently makes these. We know Nike do, we think New Balance does. We don't know about the other giants, Reebok, Puma, etc. You'd imagine they'd certainly have something in the pipeline if the prototypes aren't on the feet of athletes currently. So this is going to be a big story. This is going to run up and up, ramp up and up until Tokyo, especially assuming Tokyo happens. We are going to need almost like a pre and a post world record book. You might remember a few years ago this happened in swimming with the technology of the suits, where swimmers were wearing suits down to the wrist, down to the ankle, up to the neck, and it was actually affecting the buoyancy and changing the nature of the sport. it took quite a few years and quite a lot of records to tumble before the powers that be came in and said, no, the suits can only go to the shoulder, they can only go to the knee, etc, etc. So we don't know what's going to happen in athletics. It's going to be worth keeping an eye on. It's going to be worth keeping an eye on those records and seeing how many tumble and how many iconic records tumble as well. And sort of the calibre of the athletes as well, because meaning no disrespect, but so far athletes that are breaking records are not the ones you'd expect. So it will be very, very interesting to see if this turns some kind of mediocre semi-final type athletes into medalists. Vice versa, really, depending on who has the technology and who kind of adapts to it the best. So it's going to be worth following those shoe debates. We'll jump from one sport fueled by technology to another, a more traditional technology sport of Formula One. Jamie Chadwick has been re-signed by Williams as a development driver, which is great to see. And she's hopeful of one day having a race seat, and it would be great to have a woman back on the grid. So wishing her all the best. Sticking with the world of motorsports and a couple of other stories to bring you. Alex Lynn had a huge crash in Formula E at the weekend in Saudi Arabia, second round of the championship. He's reported to be okay, which is great to hear because that was quite a scary one, and quite frankly we've had enough scary crashes in motorsport in the last couple of years. Speaking of scary crashes, Billy Munger has completed his version of a triathlon for Red Nose Day, raising money for charity. He walked, cycled and kayaked his way down from the north to the south, finishing with some laps of Brands Hatch. Pretty much hasn't cycled, I think, since his accident, said he hadn't kayaked ever. So it's an absolutely incredible achievement. For those of you who don't know the Billy Munger story, he was involved in a crash a few years ago as a kid, basically. He's still very, very young. He's lost both of his legs, one above the knee, one I think just below the knee. Incredibly inspirational character. And his story, Driven, is still available on iPlayer, so absolutely advise anyone to go and watch that. You will come away very, very, very inspired by a very, very cool young man. So that's the world of motorsport. We've still got more F1 car launches coming up this week. Mercedes break cover tomorrow, as do Alpine. 2 weeks to go till pre-season testing in Bahrain. We still don't know if Alonso's going to be there. He didn't go to the Alpine car launch in person. He's doing it off video link from Switzerland. So it'll be interesting to see what shape he's in for pre-season testing, which is coming up in Bahrain on the 12th of March. Right, so that's pretty much it for today. Next week we have obviously the fallow Six Nations week, but we'll bring you an update of Scotland, France and what's going on there. There's more tennis happening globally, so that'll be interesting to look at. Fourth test between England and India at Ahmedabad, and plenty of other stuff to get to grips with. So we will be back next week. Look forward to seeing you then. And yeah, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy lockdown, and keep watching that sport, and we'll be back with more news next week.